Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am okay.
Uh,
Hang
all
on,
right.
change my camera angle here. Make that a little higher. That's better. Okay, cool. How are you? What's going on?
Well, we're getting ready for my kids to be here for my birthday party. Not on my birthday, but a party before that, which is going to be a very nice thing.
And are you just gonna have a big meal at the house, or
No,
what
we're
is
going to go up to Montosh is hosting us at the country club.
there?
And so, you know, it'll be out in the on their patio and it'll be very nice.
Because how
So,
many of you will there be?
well,
Because
uh, I think there'll be 15 of us, won't there, John?
15 to 20, somewhere in there.
We'll see how many come. Anyway, yes. So that's very nice.
and
Very happy day.
103.
Yeah. All
Nice.
right.
Good.
So we
Well,
got stuff to talk about, don't we?
we do. You start.
Well, all right. I heard yesterday that oh, what's her name? The actress Meryl Streep either wrote a book or an article about or she did something, but I heard that she was activating the concept that when we have done we as the human race have done research on our genetics and our our evolving process, it's all been on men. Very little on women. And this morning on Morning Joe, I heard the same thing. They were talking about the fact that the research that we have is all on men, not on how we as women have evolved. And since last week we talked about the Dare to be a Danielle, for us to stand up and really take our place in the universe as women this time around, I think is really important. And as I think back on my years in this realm, and then before me of my mother, who was a, a physician in a time when women really were not being considered as physicians, so that when my dad was doing his residency, she was on his card as his assistant, so that because she could do that and be respected, whereas if she tried to have a a, a you know a similar spot in the eyes of the people that they couldn't comprehend it. When I started my practice in Ohio, I had people send me away and tell me to go home, and I would call Bill and he'd come and do the same thing that I would be doing, and so on. So it's been an evolving process in the field of medicine. And I think the fact that uh, people like Golda Meir and um, um, women who have stood up for who we are and are like Deborah in the Bible, and so there have been a woman here and a woman there, and who has stood up and said, "This is what we need to do." But aside from that, we have not honored our femifestation. We haven't even uh, paid a lot of attention to it. And so I think it's really a good thing for us start looking at not just at what we have done, which is the past and that won't change, but how we reach towards who our true feminine nature is. And I think that if women were in charge of things, there might be less war. You know, we settled scuttleings in our family when our kids get into things. You know, we help people learn how to get along, and in order to get along with ourselves, we learn the process of getting along with others, and the whole interaction of our true humanity, which for when we're in the feminine uh, life, this lifetime, if we can actually claim our feminifestation, I think we will be doing the world a great service. There comes a time, you know, when you've had enough of being scuttled in the back. I have this story about when we were starting the American Holistic Medical Association, and during those years, I used to be called up in front of our Maricopa County Medical Association, and the guys would tell me what I'd done wrong and all of that, and I'd accept it and go ahead and do what I had to do. But this one time, I had accepted the reprimand, and I had picked up my purse and my key chain, which was almost like a little instrument, and started walking out with my lawyer into the hall. And one of the doctors from the group came out, walked up behind me, and he says to me, "Now let me tell you something, honey." Well, that pushed a button in my psyche that I went beyond what I was going to accept. And so I turned around and I took my fist that had the keychain in it, and I pounded him on his shoulder, and I said, "Don't you call me honey. I'm your peer, age-wise and professional, and you will not call me honey." And so he kind of backed down a little bit and started, and I turned around and saw my lawyer leaning against the wall, just doubled up laughing. And when I told my daughter I had done such a horrible thing, she put her hands over her eyes and said, "Oh, my Mom." But 3 years later, when I was called in again for some other thing that uh, I'd crossed the line there, this guy came up to me. He was nice as pie. So one of the things I learned then was there is a limit to which we as women can accept the not just the pushback, but the actual degradation of who we are. I mean, he had no business calling me honey.
Right.
And so it's accepting certain parts of our history, and then of our uh, manifestation in this world at this time, where we stand up for who we are. And it's not just being fussy about it. I mean, I think what Meryl is saying and what they were saying on Marty Joe is our beginning to claim the reality that we not only are we essential to any possible manifestation that we as people do, but for our whole evolving process is interdependent, the male and the female. It's we work together in order to become who we are.
So in this article or what they were talking about on the news, did they say that things were changing and that they were doing more research on women? I mean, I know even from the, you were talking about genetically they had done research on men, but also I know that even just for testing, like regular, like how do drugs work for high cholesterol,
Right,
diabetes, or whatever it is, that they never do those tests on women.
right,
Um, so
right.
did it
It's,
changing that?
yeah, somehow, I don't know what I hadn't read the article, so I don't know. But somehow they don't, they, we have not trusted the results that we have gotten from women when the results have been different from what they have been for men. I think when they've done that, the few times they've done the testing on women, it's not always the same as, like, not just on medications and so on, but on longevity. Women live longer than men do.
I'm so sorry to even say this, but like, how dumb can they be? We are different beings, hormones, and we have a completely different system. Like, of course, it's not going to be the same.
Yeah.
I mean, it just boggles the mind. Like, these are intelligent people who understand anatomy and physiology, one would think and hope, that are doing these tests. Why would you think they would be the same, men versus women?
And they understand our history, and they understand our evolving process, and they understand that more than half, at least half of us are female. Yes, I mean, it's that kind of ridiculous uh, uh, research,
Right.
if you please, that is being called in question now. So I think it's a good time for us to stand as a Danielle and claim who we are. I think somehow how they've crossed the line, and it's enough already.
So, yeah, wow, that is just okay. So, here's a question for you. You just shared with me earlier that you are doing a little, you're talking at the Mayo Clinic and you're talking at ASU,
Medi-
coming, right?
Yeah,
At
yeah.
medical school. So, did they have you talking about something specific, or is this something you could bring up at these places?
They let me talk. I'm old enough that they can let me talk what I want to talk. So I'll see what happens.
Yeah, interesting. And how much time do you have at each place?
I'm not sure. I think it's, I'm not sure. I'll be on Zoom, so it'll, I'm not going to go there.
Right.
No,
But that's okay.
that's okay. Yeah.
Well, it is so interesting. And I mean, that's great that Meryl Streep is bringing it up because she's got a platform, she's got a voice, people respect her. And so we need people like that to keep stepping up and step up to that line in the sand and say, this is unacceptable.
And to bring their own life experiences into
Mm-hmm.
into the uh, research and the life process.
Right.
So yeah, we're so stuck on what we hear and read and know through our cell phones that it's Dr. Chatterjee was saying that people now take what's on the cell phone. They don't take time to process. it like we did when you heard it in the news and you heard it in a line someplace and you talked about it, you processed it. The processing of it is the feminifestation of it.
Hmm.
It's taking it in and making it what it can be. If you don't process it, it's just stored knowledge there. So what?
Right. So the femifesting is the integration, the embodiment of the information
Right.
to then be
It's making it so that it can be um, used
right.
in a manifested way. Because if you just hear it and don't process it, uh, it's knowledge that's there, and that's okay. But what are you going to do with it?
Right.
It's when you take the time to actually process it and make it usable that you have taken it in, however that process was, and let the femifestation within you, within me, within us, do what needs to be done with the food that you've taken in. It's
Mhm.
like if we fertilized a garden and then watered it so much that we wash the fertilizer away. We've not done what we intended to do.
Right. Yeah. So again, bringing it back to what do we each do about that?
Yeah,
Right. So not all the Meryl Streeps, we're not all you that have this huge platform of how we can make a change or how we can make the difference. I feel like I always want to come back to, you know, what can we do
right.
for the whole?
See,
And
you're so good. You know, you really are a master in femifestation in the way you have been able to bring uh, this allowing me to have a place to speak, but allowing people to take what comes and put it into their life, making it alive and using the knowledge that has come and the things that have come. What you've done is been the actually giving it life at some levels that it would never have had life before. And so I think when we begin to when we begin to process it in a way that we can see it as living aspects of our being, then it makes real good sense.
mhm. And maybe that just looks like for people when I mean, I'm thinking just from the medical perspective, um, is just always the asking the questions, always asking where was the research on this? How, like just asking the questions and not just taking for granted when somebody says to you, oh, you need to do this, this, and this. Okay, well, how'd you come up with that? Where does that come from? Right? Like, even the woman that I've talked about on this before, who is a master of intermittent fasting, her name is Mindy Pelz, and she wrote a book, Fast Like a Girl, because all the fasting research out there was done on men.
Of course.
And then they say, well, fasting doesn't work for women. And she's like, well, it does, but it doesn't work the same way because we are much more of a hormonal system. And so we have to eat more for our hormones and take into account a cycle if we still have a cycle, just the whole thing. And so this whole book she teaches about how to fast differently than if you were a man.
There you go. Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
so like that, like if we're told, oh, well, you can't do that because it doesn't work for women. Well, okay, ask the questions. Well, why not? And how can I do it differently?
Well, and the what we have put up with, as far as if we're with a group of some men, and this is not everybody,
Right.
but and we're discussing a subject, and we come up with a completely uh, outlandish conclusion or discussion aspect of it, that is put down as they look at each other and say, oh, it must be a period time or something like that. Something that will dismiss the femifestation that we have just revealed. And I think most of us have experienced that in our lifetime. Uh, it's a process of discounting and shoving back into the closet the information that we have been trying to bring forward. Well, when we are beginning to stand up and say, no, this is really what I think, and this is really how it feels to me, whatever it is that we're doing. And so I think that this is a good topic for us to actually bring up in our life process, where we're talking to our neighbors and our friends and our family and so on about how it feels and how we understand it, and how what we think and how we would run the world if we had a chance. I mean, there's so many different aspects of how our world has been researched and written about and categorized and all of that, that I think it's really a good time for us to begin to look seriously at the work that is being done in recognizing that it's not just men and women, but it's that we have this dual aspect within ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so when men discount women, they're discounting that inner core of themselves, which is the femifestation aspect of the process of that they have been manifesting.
Interesting. Right. And so it then comes down to honoring both of those sides within us.
Right.
And so you say that, I mean, we have all been raised in such a patriarchal society that, I mean, I think that there are some women who have a strong male aspect and have had to shut down their feminine side to survive.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But it's interesting because I think on both sides, I mean, I think there are plenty of women that are like, I want nothing to do with that patriarchal situation. So they shut down the male side as well. So it seems like it's a bit tricky to try and merge the two in a way that feels symbiotic.
Yeah, because we haven't been taught it.
Right.
Now be a good girl,
Yeah.
Well, being a good girl implies that we that if some man says something to us, we say yes or whatever. I mean, it doesn't mean complete acceptance, but it means that we kind of uh, accept the fact that somewhere we're not quite as good. You
Right.
know, it's that lingering thing. It's like when I was always questioning my voice. I mean, I'd say things that I knew were right, and then I would, you know, wonder, well, who else would, it was this lingering doubt that would creep in. And I think that's what we're working with right now, is that we really, oh, you know what it is. This is interesting. I think I told you about the Welsh when I was doing a lecture, and this other woman came up, and she and my son Bob had said that he came from a weird family, and she said, "Well, she's from Wales." And when the Welsh people greet each other in the mornings, they don't say, "Good morning, how are you?" They say, "How is your weird?" Because to them, the weird is that inner core of essence that that is to be addressed. So I don't know any other country that does that, or any other group of people, but I think what they're doing when they say to each other, "How is your weird?" is addressing the femifestation aspect of that person, so that they understand that it's an equal uh, uh, part and needs to be addressed.
Hmm. Yes, I agree. And somebody is commenting and said, why don't Americans turn towards the often matriarchal cultures of the indigenous people of their continent?
That's
It's all
right.
there in front of you, has
Yeah,
been 500
yeah,
years.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. We need to, uh, if we really need to understand who and what we are, we need to reclaim our past and begin to understand that. And does mean pay attention to the indigenous people, because they are accepting the reality of the past, and what it has, the juice that it has given them to keep in touch with Mother Nature, and and how we've treated Mother Earth is totally not femifesting.
right. So I have a question for you. When you were first in practice with your husband,
Yeah,
and you had people questioning you because you were a
yeah,
female,
yeah.
did you ever question yourself and feel like you compared yourself to your husband and felt like you weren't as good as he was of a doctor?
No, not at that point, because I knew where I stood, and I had a claim. Yeah, I had actually claimed my spot, and and that made it possible for me to really call Bill in and let him do what I was doing, and send the patient to the hospital or whatever, and go home. But I could, because I was accepting where the reality of the manifestation at the time, that they don't accept women doctors. But so I accepted that and did a Kuchbarwane. I did a, it doesn't matter. I have to go on. I had other things that I had to do. If I put a lot of energy into that, I would have missed uh, making the progress that we made in that town, so that by the time uh, we left, they, I was the first one they called.
Right, right. Yeah, so I think, I mean, it makes sense to me that you had such a great role model with your mother
Oh, yeah.
that it would have given you that, uh, just that confidence from the get-go. Because I know for me, being in chiropractic school with my who's now my ex-husband, and there weren't as many women as men like you and all of it. I really doubted myself all along, and I
Yeah.
always felt like I wasn't as good as um, he was as a
Yeah.
chiropractor. Really long time to finally sink in and own that I was good at what I did, and as good as.
Yeah.
But it was
Well,
strict,
yeah, me finding my voice and realizing that basically saying the same thing,
right?
because I was, you know, it's the parts that of our own being that we don't really understand until we understand them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And do you have you had times in your life and career where you have been, how do I want to say this? Like women have, well, you did say that. You were treating women who said, "We don't want you, we want the man."
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
But
so the had bought the
yeah,
story that we were, yeah, that's so
and
interesting.
but then I had the opportunity of going to Afghanistan, where those women had never been heard,
Mm,
and they didn't even understand their own process. So we had an opportunity as women to reclaim our feminfestation at a time when they had never even heard of such a thing. And they took it and they went home, and the problem was solved. Because when we women learn something, we teach it. It's almost uh, inherent within us to want to share what we know.
interesting.
That's,
Somebody's confidence is higher than belief.
oh, that's very good. That's very good.
Yeah. 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 So maybe it's more about that then, like you're teaching the women how to birth babies and what that whole process was like and how to be safer and all of it. So maybe there is something to be said for um, the red tent. I always like back in the day. I always did. You ever read the book The Red Tent?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so after I read that book, I was like, oh, I want to create red tent events and have like a weekend retreat of women that, just do all of those things and teach each other and take care of one another. And I do think that somebody did do that. I don't know if it still exists, but I think somebody finally picked that up. But that's kind of what you're talking about, is creating circles of women that just keep educating one another.
Safe places for it.
Right.
You know, uh, in my mother's time, women did quilting, and uh, did they spun yarn and did that kind of stuff, and they do it as a group. They'd have their quilting bees and so on. And so there's still people like Doris Solberg, this friend of mine, who has a group of people, women who do this, and it's amazing. And there's some women who are, some churches who have women in their group who make knit little hats for newborns that don't have them, that kind of thing. There are women who know the importance of having this time with each other. It used to be when I was in Wellsville that the only thing that women did was uh, you know, cards, and they'd have a card party and something like that.
That kind of-
But you know, but the whole process of doing creative things and learning from each other and is something that I really think would be a good thing for us to reclaim.
right. Yeah, I agree.
However we choose to do that, and because in each culture it would be different.
Right. Hmm. Well, we'll see where that lands. That's great.
Yeah,
I love.
and it wouldn't be a put down.
No.
It wouldn't be something that, oh, well, if the guys wanted to, they could say, oh yeah, well, that's just the girls doing that. Well, okay, we'd put our shoulders back and say yes.
Yeah, it just is so interesting that we are still at this place, in the evolution of women
Yeah,
that we got so knocked back at some point along the way.
yeah, because so unclaimed, you know, talk about the people who have been pushed back into uh, uh, not knowing who they are.
Right.
There's so many women who have great ideas and great talent and great wisdom, and they don't have any place to share it. So if we can begin to look for ways in which women can really begin to manifest how they respond to and work with life processes, I think it would be a good thing. And something very sad. I think this thing that we did in the, uh, I don't know, 90s or something, of taking the arts out of the high schools has been just a terrible, terrible thing that we did to our children. Because that was one thing where the women, home economics, sure, I didn't learn anything in home economics because I wasn't interested in it. But the whole process of having the energy and the research and the work with art and music and dance and so on, which we used to teach in the schools.
Mm-hmm.
And and now where is the uh, opportunity for our high school kids to really find out if that's something that they would like to do?
Right.
I mean, they don't have an opportunity to even find out if these arts are what is missing in their whole being. And maybe that's why some of this killing is going on with the men, because they know there's something that's not right. That's why I think the dogs in the classroom would be wonderful. And I think that reclaiming our femifestation is going to be really, really important.
So somebody's asking, how do we claim our spots in the face of deception by men everywhere, feeling consistently undermined and silenced?
Standing up and say, I had to stand up to that doctor who was calling me honey. There comes a point at which, no, that's not acceptable.
Right.
And
Right.
it's not that you're mad at them or anything. It's just that that's just simply not acceptable.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. My ex-husband has a very interesting habit and speaks to women that way and says honey and still calls me honey. And I'll just look at him. I'm like, I am not your honey. Like, you can't, you can't use that language. Like, what is, yeah, it's so fascinating. They just, I don't know. Anyway, and I'm not mad about it. I'm just like, nope, course correct. Can't
Yeah,
use that.
yeah. That's a bad word. It's that uh, standing up for ourselves, putting our shoulders back, and looking them in the eye, and basically saying, "I'm your peer." You know, you can't say that to me,
Right,
and
right,
you can't just go around doing it. But there are times. But there are times when you do it, like when I told the older gentleman that I could do it, and you know, the whole process of being 99 and he was
oh,
86 and stuff.
right,
But that was funny. That was really something you can take. Here's what it is. If you can accept yourself where you are and then not let the lines be crossed, you can either just claim it forcefully or make a joke out of it. I mean, you know, be able to laugh about it. I mean, the whole thing is pretty stupid anyway.
right, 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 right. So Linda in the UK, who she shares a lot, says my sister goes to a quilting class every week in the UK and loves it. My friend is a midwife and she asks people to knit hats for tiny babies.
Yeah, yeah. See, it's that kind of women when they learn something that makes them feel good, they teach other people.
Right,
You can't help it because you know you teach your kids, but they grow up and go on their own. But the fact that you're in a community where there are other women who, you know, maybe it's having a song fest, I don't know, you know, but finding something that makes your heart sing and makes women's hearts sing, makes Afghani woman give her wedding vest to me because I gave her 3 safety pins
right,
and the information about what she was doing when she was having babies.
right. Well, and it just made me think too that, you know, you have how many sons? You have six
I
children. You had six,
have 4 sons and 2 daughters.
right. So, you know, you led by example. So your sons did not become men, I'm assuming, did not become men who patronized women, who belittled,
They
like they understood who you were and how you move through the world. And am I correct?
they better not.
And so there is that job of women raising
Right.
boys.
Yeah.
And you know, that's one thing that we can do every single day is educate
Abs-
our boys on how to just the reality of what's happening in the male female mix of things.
and live it ourselves so that they can see that it works.
Right,
You know,
right, right.
if we can live it ourselves, our children and grandchildren, it'll be like my little 3-year-old great grandson who comes into my house and he looks around and he says, I like this house.
Yeah,
You know, basically, he's claiming his heritage.
right, right. So the person said, I like the phrase, this is not acceptable that you just used.
Yes,
Sometimes we find the right words for a simple thing.
right. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
You're not, we're not saying this is horrible, this is bad, you're
you're
sinning or anything like that. We're saying, no, this is just not acceptable.
right, right. So, yay. Well, that was a hot topic, and I'm glad that you brought that up today.
Yeah,
So good. So good.
Yep. And I'll bet you there'll be more articles about the research as it goes forward
Mm,
to really, really claim our manifestation.
right. Yeah, which is beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Uh,
Well, I bring it to a close, but I've got to get going so I can.
All righty.
Um, so much love to you. Oh, and just have the best weekend celebrating 103 years.
Yeah.
Family, such a beautiful, beautiful thing.
It really is. It
Yeah.
really is.
So
Yeah.
love.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we'll talk next week. And thank you, everyone, for being here and chiming in. We always love to hear from you and what you're thinking,
Right.
what your
Right.
are. So
Yeah.
back next Tuesday.
Yep. Yep.
All right. Love
All
you.
right.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.